Chris Nordyke runs Floodlight Consulting Group out of Oregon and co-hosts the Head, Hearts, and Boots, the longest-running podcast in restoration. He didn't take the obvious path in Cutco knives in college, an ink cartridge franchise, a stint at Cintas with a decade as a State Farm agent before walking away at 32 because corporate kept slapping his wrist for meddling in his clients' claims. That instinct is what makes him useful now, helping restoration owners build sales teams that don't leak money. In this episode, Chris gets into the math most owners don't want to see. The $3 million companies swearing they close 80% who are actually at 40 to 50%, leaving millions on the table. He explains why a yard sign is an $8 sales rep, shares the 5x5 canvassing trick his grandfather used to milk in the 1970s, and tells the story of a Houston rep who fanned out glossy slicks at a chief engineer who turned out to have run the facilities at the Astrodome, a detail she'd walk out without ever knowing. If you ever maxed out your plumber referral and you're eyeing commercial work without a plan, this one's for you. Hey, Chris, thanks a lot for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate you taking the time and talking with me today.
Yeah, same, dude. I'm really excited to chat.
Yeah, for sure. I was really excited to talk to you because I've followed you a lot and listened to a bunch of stuff that you've done over the years. The podcast, just kind of shorts, LinkedIn material. I like the mix of studio time versus outside time, and it's nice to. You're almost like my go-to person to really understand the heartbeat of the industry, right, and knowing what's going on. So it's a thrill to talk to you today. But for those of folks who, for whatever reason, have not been able to, uncover your content and discover your content, give us a little bit of a background of how you got to this place, how you got in the industry, and a little bit of brief discussion. We'll talk about more of it here later on at the end, but what you do in the industry now so we can kind of get a good idea of your background.
Yeah, great question. So I went off to college thinking I was going to be a musician, a professional musician. I grew up playing and singing in church. I was a choir boy in high school. I dabbled in sports, but really I was a choir guy.
I was too.
Yeah. So choir guy, I was in drama, and frankly, I did really well at those things. I just kind of took to it naturally, and both my parents were musicians. So anyway, I went off to college. Quickly learned that, practically speaking, I was either going to be the next Michael W. Smith or, Bob Dylan or, whatever, or I was going to end up a music teacher. And I knew I did not want to be a music teacher. My father actually was a teacher for almost 40 years. And so I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly of that life. And so I decided against that. But around that time, when I came back from my freshman year, my wife got recruited by a company called Cutco Knives.
Oh, yeah. And, they come sharpen your knives and try to sell you on knives. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So I got sucked into it, and I became a Cutco sales rep. And that was my first foray into business because I was a 1099 person. And then I quickly got recruited up into their management training program and then moved from Oregon to Los Angeles to open up a training office where I recruited sales reps, trained them, and we sold a ton of Cutco knives. And so that, when people ask where I came from, that was actually probably one of the most transformative, kind of foundational experiences I had, to be honest. It really, I guess, sparked in me a love for sales. Like I remember going to the interview with Cutco, which is basically just an all call. They'll recruit anybody that can fog a mirror. I didn't understand that at that point, but I just remember thinking it was my first exposure to sales, and I remember thinking to myself, "Holy cow! Like people can make a living just talking." And I thought, "Wow, this is cool." And so I did it and did pretty well with it. Subsequent to that, I owned a small company. I owned a new franchise. If people remember back in the day when companies were springing up to refill ink cartridges and laser toners, right? People got tired of paying
things
HP like $80 for a freaking ink cartridge.
Yeah.
So my buddy and I, we bought a franchise, and we were doing that in our local community and did pretty well with that. And so that was my first foray really into owning like a service business. I spent some time, I was part of the contract sales team at Cintas Corporation, selling uniform and laundry contracts for about a year and a half. And that's where I met my business partner in the rapid refilling franchise. But Cintas was another really formative experience for me. Their sales training was what really taught me how to sell to businesses, which later on, and will come up certainly in our conversation, like Floodlight has developed a real specialty in helping companies sell commercial and learn to sell commercial. And most of my knowledge and experience and expertise flows out of that early experience with Cintas in my mid-20s. And so that was powerful because it taught me how to sell to business owners. And then subsequent to that, when I sold my interest in the Rapid Refill Inc. business, one of my customers happened to be a State Farm agent. I'd been selling him a bunch of laser toners, and I would make it a point to deliver his products, and he and I would just hit it up and chat. And we developed a real friendship while I was running that business. And when I stopped that, he said, "Hey, if you don't have any immediate plans, come apprentice with me in my State Farm business. And if you're any good, maybe you can get your own agency." Well, that sparked, basically a 10-year run in my career within State Farm companies. I was a corporate employee for a minute. I had my own agency for about 5-6 years of that. Was a top performing agent, a top 100 new agent. And it was a really incredible experience. I think one of the things it's funny when we look back, I'm 46 now, and I left the insurance business when I was 32. The reasons why I left the insurance business were probably a product of my immaturity and my ego, to be totally honest.
Interesting.
State Farm had a very tight system. And if you didn't play the game exactly how they wanted you to play it, special approval processes and a form for this and a form for that to fill out, and I was just not that guy at the time. And I got frustrated by the really tight, what would you call it, franchise kind of environment of it.
SOPs kind of, too.
Yeah, there you go. It's funny, especially considering the business I'm in now. But, it's like I think all of us can look back in our career in business and our work, and it's like, you got to work through all that ego stuff. And I just thought I was too cool for school. I thought the way I was running the agency was better than what State Farm came up with. And so I ultimately left. I got frustrated, getting my hand slapped at every turn. But that's ultimately how I made my way into restoration, which I'm really thankful for. One of the things, and this really ties into just how I see the industry, I was one of those agents that I really cared about claims experience. Because I felt like every client I was selling them vapor. I was selling them a promise. Yeah. And so when claims roll around, and this is another reason why I left State Farm, is because agents are really supposed to operate at arm's length. Like we're not allowed to give gifts to our clients. There's so much regulation, and internally, agents are not supposed to meddle in claims. And I was constantly meddling in them, because if I felt like my client was getting a raw deal or we weren't following the language of the policy, I'd step in and advocate for them. And so I was constantly getting my wires crossed with corporate because of that. And what I found when I came into restoration, man, it was like one of the things I was so in love with is that I had no constraints or restrictions beyond money of how I could help and serve my client in this crazy time. Right? Which in almost every case is a really negative and stressful situation for the client. And so I found myself being able to do creative things to really perfect and control the claim experience for my client. And I loved that because I felt like my hands were tied. As a State Farm agent, I would lose clients occasionally because my adjuster was having a bad day, or the clients had a bad experience even with their restoration company. There was nothing I could do about it, really.
Right.
And so anyway, that was one of my biggest kind of revelations coming into the business was, wow, it's a profoundly difficult industry. And yet if you're creative and you're dedicated, you really have a lot of influence over the claim experience of that homeowner and or business owner. And I loved that. I really bought into the hero persona that so many of us kind of cherish in this industry. It's what drew us in, is helping people at their worst time of need and being seen as a hero. Man, I latched onto all of that.
Yeah, in my time owning a restoration company, I worked with a lot of agents, and there were two mindsets with agents. There was claims get in the way of me selling policies. So someone comes in, pass it off to the claims office, pass it off to a restoration company that I knew did a good job. So I knew that homeowner was. It's not like I was completely callous, agents, but that just wanted to get off my desk. And there were other agents that were intimately involved in it. I found my experience is that the agents that were intimately involved with it, the policy holders were typically very beholden to them and really had a lot of allegiance to them. And multiple generations would then stick with that agency. So my daughter's got insurance with that agency. And I think that some agencies fail to understand the correlation between being involved in a claim and selling and retaining clients as well. That was a bit of a disconnect.
Well, the State Farm agent that really I admired going in, apart from my mentor agent that I really admired, but he was more my age. He was one of the older agents in town. His name was Jerry Latimer. Jerry Latimer he ended up being an agent for like 45 years before he retired. But this was the guy, dude. He had a reputation with his clients. He had this Cadillac. He was such the prototypical khaki pants wearing State Farm agent, like you'd imagine in the commercials, like a good neighbor. But he had a chainsaw that he kept in the trunk of his car all the time. And when he would have a client, for example, like a windstorm, we had them around here, and somebody would have a tree fall in their backyard or fall in their fence or whatever, he would get the call. He'd say, "I'll be there in 10 minutes." And he personally, instead of them having to file a claim, he'd be like, "I'll take care of this for you right now. Don't even worry about it. I'm going to make you some firewood." Awesome. He was that kind of guy. And I was so drawn to that. I'm like, I want to be that guy.
Yes.
I want to be this good neighbor State Farm agent. It appealed to my ego. It was all the things. But I also did recognize too the tension that agent owners live in, where there's so much pressure to sell that claims can feel like a distraction or an annoyance or a hindrance to them growing their agency. And so I remember that tension, but I was always drawn to the claims because I'm like, this is how I make people love me and love my agency, is how we take care of them during claim time. And I just constantly found myself kind of handcuffed in that regard,
Yeah. So I want to go into your experience is vastly not weighted, but you've had a lot of experience with sales from the restoration industry and other industries as well. And that's why I say it's weighted, because, boy, you've been able to have a lot of different perspectives with sales. With restoration, it's challenging for me to fully understand what that means, because sales can either be, hey, you're drumming up business and referral business, which we're going to go over here in a little bit. It could be first response contracts with commercial. That could be a part of a sales function. It could be, hey, once the call comes in, we got to go out and we got to sign that fire. We got to go sign that water job. That's sales. So within your ecosystem and within the Floodlight ecosystem, how do you guys define sales, and where does marketing start and when does sales start? Or when does marketing stop and when does sales start?
Gosh, that's perfect. Well, I think if we get technical, right, marketing is demand generation, right? What you're doing is it's brand awareness and demand generation, and it's making people aware of your brand. You could argue that referral partner development is a form of marketing. I prefer to think about it as sales, though. And the reason is because I think awareness is no longer effective as a primary tool. Generating awareness only does so much for you these days because there is so much noise.
So much messaging.
I mean, literally before I got on this call, if I'm totally honest, you know what I was doing? I was doom scrolling through Facebook while I ate my lunch. And in that time, I was probably bombarded with 14 or 15 different advertising messages. Hey, look at me. Look at me. Wait, look over here. Look at this. Remember that shirt you looked at on that website, yesterday, right? Here's an ad for that. You should buy it, right?
And if I asked you what was the best reel that you saw, you probably couldn't even come up with one of them.
No, I couldn't.
And
this is the problem with marketing and the way we thought about it. And listen, when I first got in the industry 10 plus years ago, it was all top of mind awareness driven, route sales.
It was.
The last one in or the most memorable person is the one that's likely going to get the call. It doesn't have anything to do necessarily with performance unless you're really terrible. It really has to do with who is the most memorable to that office staff that took that claim call. Because everybody's doing the same thing. And so that we've seen so all that to say, at Floodlight, everything with us starts with sales. And there's a few different sales areas that we think of. We think of field sales, which is referral partner development, commercial business, hunting, right? I'm hunting for new opportunity and I'm cultivating those relationships on an ongoing basis. That's field sales is the way I want us to think about that. And then we have job side sales or operational selling practices, okay? And those are all equally important. So one way you can think about operational sales is how do we maximize the value of a lead or a relationship that's already in front of us? We have jobs in progress. What are the sales behaviors and the critical roles and interactions we're having with clients in order to not only maximize the value of that one job, getting a 5-star Google review, getting a referral to somebody, getting an introduction maybe to a commercial prospect. And how do we make sure we're capturing the highest percentage of these leads that are coming through the door as well? And that's probably, by the way, man, from an operations perspective, one of the biggest problems that restoration companies have is they have poor conversion rate. They're spending all this money. Average, like for MIT losses in a lot of markets now, the cost of the customer acquisition cost is close to $1,000 in some markets for a MIT lead for PPC. But the worst part is it actually wouldn't be that bad if we were all closing at 80 or 90% on the leads we have coming in. But man, I can't tell you, most companies either have no idea what their close rate is, like they really don't know. They'd be like, well, probably 80%. No, when we bring clients on, it's one of the first things we audit. And many times we find out when we actually go through and audit all the inbound jobs and then how many of them went into production, in many cases, it's closer to 40 or 50%. Now you think about a $3 million restoration company, which you could say is the vast majority of companies out there, 3 million or smaller in the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
So if you're only closing 50% of the opportunities that are coming in front of you, how much money? If you're doing 3 million and your close rate is 50%, that math is real simple.
Yeah.
We have a lot of companies that come to us at, $2-3 million and they want to get to 5. And again, our focus always starts at sales because everything else becomes obvious. When we start to look at close rate, we start to uncover all kinds of intelligence about that business. Because first of all, they often don't know it. Second of all, it's almost always less than they think it is. And when we start to show them, do you realize you probably left $3 million of revenue on the table last year simply because your close rate is terrible and you've never done anything to train up against it? People are just there, both mind-boggled and pissed off, as you might imagine, when they figure that out. But then as we start to dig in deeper, well, we can quickly identify the systems and processes, lack of accountability, lack of clarity and consistency inside the business, all of the other downstream problems that are contributing to that low close rate. And then, of course, that's part of our job. As consultants, as we get in there, we help people, fix it and put that stuff in place. But man, it all starts with sales. Let me give you one other example of how we look at sales. A lot of other verticals are just way ahead of us. Roofing, plumbing, HVAC, they're all better at this than we are right now. On the operational selling side. But we teach our clients, what we call every job sales activities. And I'll just give you a couple as examples.
Love it.
One of the every job sales activities we advocate for is simply placing a yard sign at the home of every place we do business. Painters do it, roofers do it, many other pest control companies do it, security alarm companies, all of these companies do it. Why do they do it? I always ask myself when I see everybody doing something or most doing something, why? Well, the conclusion is that that sign is like an $8 sales rep for you in that neighborhood. There's a book by Robert Cialdini called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. And it is probably one of the top 10 best business books ever written because it deals into the psychology of consumer behavior. And an entire chapter is dedicated to this term called social proof. And all it means, without getting into all the technicalities, is that now that I'm friends with you, Mike, if I see you, for example, at RAA next week, and you're wearing one of those Aura rings, those fitness trackers, I don't have one yet. And if I were to see you wearing it, now that I know you and like you, and I saw you wearing an Aura ring, well, now that conspires with the Aura ring ads I've been wearing. And I'm like, well, if Mike has one, it's probably good. I probably should just bite the bullet and buy it. You may have not told me anything about the Aura ring, but me just seeing you wearing one confirms something inside my subconscious mind. And that's exactly the same principle with yard signs and some of the other things we do. Social proof is a very powerful decision driver. So that's one. And it's so funny because I think owners get hung up on the edge cases. So when I teach this, sometimes I get owners like, well, we have a lot of HOAs in our market and they don't allow signs. I'm like, okay, so don't place one when you're in an HOA. Problem solved.
Problem solved. Yeah, done.
Let's not get caught up in edge cases. And that's for some reason, us as entrepreneurs, we do that. Oh, that'll never work because of that, right? It's like, okay, then don't do it in that circumstance. But so the second thing we do with every job sales activities is what we call the 5x5. And this is so powerful and it's free. It's basically free. This is something my grandfather taught me. My grandfather, while he was putting himself through grad school to become a teacher, he had 3 young boys. He was hustling to go to school and work, and he was a milk salesman. He drove a milk truck. Think about that, huh? 1970s. This was still happening. And
you know what's funny though, Chris? Not to sidetrack you too much. We had milk salesmen, and then we went to the grocery store. Now I get my groceries delivered to me from Walmart. Now I got milk delivery guys again. It all came full circle.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
What an amazing world we live in, right? Well, okay, so my grandpa, his secret to success, he was the #1 milk salesman for this dairy every month the whole time he was there. And I remember one time he would take me out even like on, we would talk about business because he also did like Amway. He was a multi-level marketer guy too. And he was telling me one time about his milk success. And he said, look, this is what I did. And it just befuddled all of his fellow guys. He wouldn't tell them, but this is all I did. Every time I stopped at a new account, I would take my little price sheet and I would go to the houses on either side and the 3 across the street. And I would let them know, hey, I just started delivering milk for the Joneses. I'm going to be here every Tuesday. Here's my price sheet. If you want milk, just let me know. Just call this number and I'll add you to my route. I'll be here next Tuesday. Yeah. And he had so many people who were like, oh my gosh, yeah, just add us. I mean, he was far and away the #1 sales guy. So we borrowed that, stole that idea, and Brandon and I brought that into how we were operating with our own company as we were coming up in the industry. And so imagine this, if you're doing 500 jobs a year, let's just say, and if you just commit with your senior tech or your MIT PM or whoever goes and sets up jobs to have them do a 5x5, they take this little handbill flyer, and we walk to the 2 houses on either side after we've set up the job, stabilized, placed our equipment, done our thing. We put the sign in the yard, and then we go to the neighbor next door and we say something like this. And we have training videos where we teach techs this. Knock on the door. Half the time today, especially post-COVID, a lot of people work from home, but about half the time, nobody's going to answer. You just slide that handbill in the weather stripping of the door, you keep walking. And when somebody answers the door, you simply say, hi, my name's Chris. I'm with XYZ Restoration. I want to just introduce myself and give you our information. We're working on something at the Joneses' house. We want this to be a good experience for the neighbors. So if we happen to park in front of your mailbox, or we're here too late, making too much noise, please call us, and we'll do whatever we can to accommodate.
I love that.
And then we have an oh, by the way statement before we turn and leave. Oh, by the way, just keep this information maybe on your refrigerator or in your junk drawer in the kitchen.
Yeah.
In case you need us, we're open 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's amazing about that, first of all, if you do 500 jobs a year and you implement that practice, it takes 10 minutes before they leave. That's 2,500 high touches with your brand in the areas of your market that you're already working. You have a sign. There's the social proof component, but 2,500 marketing touches that you aren't doing right now. What's the impact of that?
Yeah.
And it's nearly free. It's a sunk cost. You already have your technician team there in that neighborhood. And so what I tell people in our coaching is if people are struggling with lead flow, instead of doing 5, maybe the owner or the MIT manager shows up, swings by every job, and instead of them doing a 5x5, they canvas 20 homes in the neighborhood. Right? It's like when things are slow, double down on that practice. And we've had so many things, but the cool thing is though, is that it also turns into mold leads and water damage leads. Because about 10% of the time, whatever, the person's like, hey, do you have time? Can you come look at this?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're into an inspection.
Yeah.
So that's an incredibly powerful.
You know, Chris, I love that. And I almost think you could take that a step further. And for recon companies who are doing recon, we got to paint this house anyway. If you guys want to paint, we'll knock off some money because our painters are going to be here anyway, and they can kind of do coats in between each other's jobs. So once Mr. and Mrs. Smith's job is drying, we can go over to your job and paint your living room or whatever.
Brilliant.
I love what you're saying because you can really kind of involve the community and the neighbors into one job, and it could really magnify each call out for sure.
Yeah. Let me give you one more. So one of the other this stuff is just so good because if people do it, and of course that's the thing, right? We learn these cool things as owners and they just kind of fall into the idea pile, right? But the people that execute on this stuff, it's great. So we have this other thing called the golden question. Okay. So the golden question at the end of a job, we're going to collect maybe the certificate of satisfaction, right? Or we're picking up our sign, yard sign, or we're collecting final payment. Okay. So the very last thing we do is we go back to Mr. and Mrs. Jones and we say, hey, thank you so much for the opportunity to work for you. Oh yeah, we saw that 5-star Google review. Thank you so much. The team loves that. Can I ask you one more favor? A lot of folks here in town don't realize that we do a lot of work for businesses. Like schools, churches, hotels, senior living communities, all that kind of stuff. In fact, this year, our team is really trying to grow in senior living and hotels. Okay. Do you or Mr. Jones have any friends or family that work in those industries?
Yeah.
Now think about what's going on when I ask that question, right? I have a happy customer.
Yep.
We've just completed work for them. We're not in the middle of it. This is the very end. We've just been in their home. We've earned their trust. And we helped them out of a very difficult, stressful, negative situation. And we're on the other side. And now I'm asking them if they know people in our target commercial verticals. And so what often happens, let's just call it 20% of the time. 80% of the time they look at us funny or like, oh gosh, I don't know, they him and haw, I'll let you know. But about 20% of the time, one of two things happens. One, they'll say, oh, well, my husband, Mr. Jones, he's actually the director of facilities for the school district. Does that count? That's not senior living or hotels, but do you guys do schools? And you're like, oh, yes, right? Director of facilities. Hit the lottery because I have a happy customer who is also a commercial prospect. So that happens. The other thing that happens is they say, oh, my brother-in-law, he runs a whatever. And then my response is, and what we teach the technician or PM to say is, listen, it would mean the world to us if you would just send them a quick email today, like after I leave, or you could even do it while you're right here, and just share one or two things that you appreciated about our people or our process on this project we just did for you. And then just copy me on it. No sales pitches or anything like that. Just let them know what it was like working with us and what you appreciated.
Yeah.
Imagine the power of that email coming from somebody who just got done using a service provider. Is there a better referral into a commercial account? I don't think so. And so again, those are free examples of ways that as a company, we could be sowing seeds of opportunity into our sales pipeline without spending a dime on Google PPC or LSA ads or hiring some fancy agency to do this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
It's free, just time.
How about this one? When you mentioned that, they could also think of a time where they experienced that in a different facility, a different commercial building. Oh yeah, the McDonald's. I went to the bathroom. I noticed they had some mold growing on the ceiling or something. You go to that McDonald's, that franchise owner, and you say, "Hey, a customer told me that you've got some mold in your bathroom. You want me to take a look at it and quote it for you?" Then oh wow, okay, customers are starting to realize we got a problem on our hands. We better get this figured out. So it really gets them thinking about their personal experience and their personal touches, which is great.
Yeah. That's cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I got a grandfather story for you that goes along with social proof. So when my grandpa, he didn't go to college. He built a large siding and roofing company in Columbus, Ohio, but never went to college. Right. So he just started out with sales, and he was a door-to-door sales guy. And his first job out of high school was going to different fraternities and sororities. So for a young kid, out of high school, selling to sororities is not a bad gig. But he,
right?
he took that job and ran with it.
Positive scenery. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He sold stationery to them. So they would, I don't know this world, but apparently they would buy stationery and then they would write home to their mom and dad and whatever, and it would say their Kappa, Sigma, Alpha, whatever it is. Yeah. Anyhow, he would have orders, and the pricing sheet would always be would always be dead last of all the orders. So when he would give his pitch, he'd say, "Hey, why don't I just give you some pricing? You guys can kind of think about it and go from there." He would have to flip through all these orders that he got through the whole sorority lineup and say, "Oh, this was fraternity, sorority Delta. Do you guys know Delta? Okay, that's from them." And then he would kind of explain each one that he got, and then it would instantly make him credible. So, like you said, social selling, if your neighbor's using a company, it's massive how much credibility you instantly gain just by that yard sign.
100%. Yeah. So we're just really big believers that there's simple processes and behaviors that we can put in place as a business. It's simple. It's not easy to get people to change their behavior in any way. We all know this. All the owners listening to this podcast, they're thinking, "Oh, geez, I can't, my techs, they can't say that stuff." It's like they're going to be tongue tied. They won't know. And that's not, it's just, we develop these excuses for ourselves and our people because we believe we've tried something before, or I think sometimes we don't give our people enough credit. We think of our technicians as kind of demo donkeys, just labor. They just carry stuff. And yet the ones who are really good in this industry, they elevate that role of technician. That's what Brandon and I have always tried to do. It's like, no. I should be able to send a technician team, and that senior tech, the one with the more time and grade, leads that job. They educate the customer. They collect the work authorization. They figure out a dry plan. I don't need a MIT PM or some fancy person to come in, and I shouldn't, as the owner, have to go in and close that job, so to speak. We should be able to train techs to do that. And that was always Brandon and I's default position. And I think it's real. I think many of us just haven't put the effort in to really train our people because they turn over so fast, and we become pessimistic. We become cynical about the business.
Keep them at arm's length.
Keeps us from, and it just keeps us. We just keep thinking about them as labor units, when they are the face of our company. They're the technician. Apart from maybe the project manager, when we have a repair component, that technician is the entire brand experience for our client. And so they are the most powerful person to ask for referrals at the end because frankly, they trust that technician and they feel more affinity toward the technician and the people doing the work at their property than they probably do the owner. And so I even
100%.
counsel when we teach that golden question one, a lot of owners are like, well, yeah, my department manager or me would have to go out and do that. I'm like, no, that's a mistake because your technician is the one that has all the love built up from the client.
That's exactly it. Yep.
You know?
I would always have people tell me, like, they had no idea how much I was paying my technicians. But I would go at the end and I would scope the job and I would do a quality assurance, right? So I'd go and check to make sure everything's been dried properly. So I would send the technician out. They would do the mitigation. They would do everything. And I would come in at the back end just to make sure everything's okay. Yeah. I mean, you would not believe how many times I had people saying, well, you got to give your technicians raises. They did a great job. They didn't have any idea how much I paid them. But the amount of appreciation and love they had for those technicians and how much bond they had with those technicians, it was awesome. And it put me in an awkward situation to talk to them about that. But like, it made me feel really good that like the customer felt like they were taking care of that well. So yeah, the reciprocity with that, in extending that relationship, I think is very key.
You know what else is interesting? One of the phenomena I've observed over the years is that we can have a job that kind of didn't go well. You know, like behind the scenes, there was like we skipped steps in our process. There was low accountability. We messed up some things. We didn't follow up well on certain emails or phone calls from client or whatever. And then we'll still get a 5-star Google review.
Yeah,
and I'm like, boy, I was expecting to get blasted. And they gave a 5-star Google review. But here's the common thread. When that happened, it was always the technician or the PM that asked for the review. The customer, there's this interesting consumer behavior where most of the time, now, of course, there's Karens everywhere that are going to look for opportunities to complain and whine and broadcast how unhappy they are, right?
Yep.
But the vast majority of customers I've learned and seen over the years don't like to complain. And so there's that element is that most of us, and I even feel this way, I don't like blasting people on public reviews. Even if I'm really pissed off about a customer experience I've had, I don't want to do that to the owner or the business themselves. Yes. And I think most people are that way. But here's the other phenomena, is they especially don't want to throw the little guy under the bus. Meaning, even if they've had some annoying things with the overall experience, they won't credit their technician with those problems. It's like, well, the rest of his team kind of messed up some things, but Johnny was really great. He was really nice, and he would always talk to me when he'd check in on the job site. And so they don't ever, even if it's not even perfect
he wasn't
service.
on time because he's been working so hard and they got too much work on his plate. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? I don't think we talk about this stuff enough.
Right.
You know, but
that's cool. So I want to talk to you, and this is what I thought would be very interesting to talk to you about, because this is the landscape I started up in. It was the referral-based marketing, right? So it was the plumbers. It was very fruitful. Plumbers have become very expensive. They've moved it in-house. For whatever reason, and some markets are still great. Some markets are still great, and some markets are just brutal. It's a bloodbath out there. Yep. Agencies. From what I've heard, when I left my business, it was starting to get centralized more to TPAs and DRPs. I've heard it's starting to go back to insurance agencies, which I'm glad to hear. So that was really big. Fire departments. There's a lot of referral sources that we're looking for. Those seem to be very unpredictable and a very challenging time to kind of start seeing the fruits of your labor for that. It's very hard to judge too for sales, like you were talking about with KPIs and things like that. Like, are we effective in our marketing strategy? So, I love your approach to commercial sales and how we drum up those businesses or drum up that business, because I think it can grow a business very quickly. If you are not happy with your gross sales, it's a lever to pull where it's going to happen pretty quickly. You're not waiting for a TPA. You're not waiting for a DRP. You're not waiting for a referral source. You can have those pretty quickly happen. I think a lot of people become very not intimidated, but aware of their lack of education with how to navigate those waters, and they don't want to tackle that. So if I'm in a position, I'm like, okay, I've got my referral sources pretty darn good. I feel like I've maxed them out, and I want to start looking at commercial sales. What are some 1 to 2 things that you have found that really pushes the needle and gets them at least in the door so they can start learning about that process and start refining their skills in signing up those commercial accounts?
Well, let's be really honest here. So going into commercial sales is a big strategic decision because, first of all, one thing is you need to be well capitalized. Meaning, if you're as a company, if we've got, say, a $5 million company that's listening to us right now, and they've got 500, 600,000 out in AR that's aging. They've got an AR problem. They're having trouble collecting on their insurance jobs and everything else already.
Yep.
And they're constantly having cash flow issues. To start pivoting into commercial under those conditions can really bankrupt you financially or reputationally.
Yeah.
And some companies experience this. They're like, oh, let's just go after commercial. These other sources are drying up. But you don't take the time to really look at your business. You don't understand your financials. That would not be the time to pivot into commercial because, like many great commercial customers are going to take 45 to 90 days to pay. And in some cases, you're going to be okay with that. But it is compulsory that you, the business, are prepared for that. You have lines of credit available to handle that. That additional aging and time frame for collections, but you're spending money long before you get paid, and I think people don't talk about that enough. So I just want to say that
That's a great point.
it's really, really important. Okay, so that's the first thing I think about is our business in a position to do this? And it may just be as simple as, hey, you've been operating without a line of credit up to this point. You've been able to bootstrap and cash flow the business without it. You probably are going to want to get a lending partner in place when you go into commercial. Because what do you do if you get a $250,000 water loss and you're accustomed to handling large losses for you up to that point have been 50? Well, you've got a tremendous amount of labor and potentially equipment rental costs and so forth that you're going to have wrapped up in that project, and you may not get a check from it for 90 days. Okay, so these are practical things we need to think about. The other thing is sales rep. You need to have a full-time sales rep. If it's just you as the owner, you're like, I'm going to go get some multifamily business and whatever as an owner. Yeah, probably not. I mean, if you're a 1 in a million owner guy that just works 100 hours a week, you can do it all. Fine. I have met a few of those in our industry, but the vast majority of folks don't start going after commercial until you've got a dedicated sales rep that can help steward and manage those relationships. Okay, so that's priority number 2. And then the other things that you need to be prepared for to go into commercial is you need to have a sales methodology, because the whole candy and smiles thing that we so often do with insurance agent offices and frankly plumbers, let's be honest, plumbers is a hustle. Plumbers is not a sales job. Plumber referrals are a hustle. It's basically, to one degree or another, it's going to a plumber and saying, hey, do you have a restoration company you refer to currently? Yes. Oh, how much are they paying you? Oh, they only pay you $750 per lead. We'll pay you $1,000.
That's exactly right.
Right.
That's exactly
or
right.
We'll pay you $750, but we'll also give you a $5,000 credit per year on any warranty work that you guys are called in to do. We'll do fix it and dry outs for you. Right.
Yep.
And it's just, we sweeten the pot by giving them stuff. But when it comes to commercial sales, Mike, is all about getting to know your customer. And what I mean by that is, whereas we used to just even also do this with schools, multifamily, hospitals, all the things where we would just do kind of this candy and smile swag drop, invite them to booze and schmooze happy hours, all this kind of stuff. Now, more and more, especially post-COVID, directors of operations, chief engineers, plant managers, portfolio managers, they do not like to go out to lunch. They don't like to do happy hours. They spent 4 years in COVID doing everything via Zoom and actually getting to go home to their family, hobbies, and friends at night instead of doing stupid happy hour things and getting a vendor to pay for their beers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about that anymore. And if they do, if they're willing to take you up on that, let's meet for a happy hour or let's meet for lunch, they're probably not going to be a great customer. Right? They're probably one that's just kind of they're open to the glad handing, but they're going to take that from all your competitors too. They're going to go to all the golf tournaments with your competitors and go to the box seats at the, you know what I mean? And so how we differentiate ourselves now is by showing an actual interest in their business. So here's what the sales meeting of today and tomorrow looks like in restoration. You're a property manager, or what now is more commonly referred to as a community manager. Let's say you oversee a community of 300 units, a pretty decent sized apartment complex or apartment community, right, is how they talk about it. And I sit down with you and I say, hey, look, Mike, obviously you know what I do. You know, we're a disaster restoration company. We do all the things. In this meeting, and I set my phone on the table, by the way, and I start and I say, hey, I'm recording our meeting, by the way, so I'll have a transcript. I'll share my notes with you afterwards. This way I don't have to take notes.
Yep.
So I'm running a transcriber during the meeting, and I say, Mike, let's just forget about restoration for the moment. I don't know if you need it. I don't know what your experience is, but just start by talking to me about who some of your favorite contractors are to work with and why. And then, Mike, you tell me, well, listen, I've always loved Columbia Roofing. You know, when we've had roof replacements on our properties, like they're just great to work with. Well, tell me more about that, Mike. What is it about their people or their process that makes them great to work with? And Mike, listen, the reason why I'm asking these questions, this isn't a gotcha moment. It's, Mike, I don't know if I have anything to sell you, but I want to know what you like about other companies to see how we match up. Right? Because if other companies are doing something we're not, that property managers like, I want to steal that idea and implement it with my team. So full transparency, that's what I'm doing here, Mike. So anyway, tell me more about Columbia Roofing. And we do this. We spend the whole sales meeting doing this. Okay, Mike, any other vendors that you really love working with? Oh man, you know, the company that does our parking lot. It seems like a simple thing, but you know, I love how they do this. Oh, that's great. Hey, Mike, when was the last renovation you did here on site? What was the last big CapEx project? Oh, we replaced all the balconies on all our units last summer. Tell me how that project went. What was the most stressful part of that project for you guys on site and why? Right? And then eventually I might get, see, when I put all the attention on them, eventually what happens in a lot of those sales meetings is they will circle back to me and say, hey, I've been doing all the talking here. I want to learn about you guys. And then they'll ask me about me. And then the funny thing is oftentimes I'll, as quickly as possible, try to transition back to them, right? Yeah. Because it's this principle of know thy customer. Know thy customer. And I teach this in my workshops. Sometimes I do live workshops for groups of restorers. And I break it up into 3 areas. I always, whenever I'm interacting with a prospect or a customer, so everything I'm about to say applies to your existing customers as well. This is so important with commercial in particular, right? Mr. and Mrs. Jones, no matter how big of a job we do for them, we're likely to do one job for Mr. and Mrs. Jones in their lifetime, in our lifetime, one. But with commercial, all of that changes. Because I'm likely going to do, hopefully, I'm going to do a job with them several times a year, if I'm a little bit lucky. For
that
the
was
rest
my
of my
question.
business.
It's like a multifamily. What 300 door unit is that? A couple times a year? Then is that how fruitful that account will be?
So here's an interesting metric. I remember early days. I met with a sales rep for what was this big company? I can't remember the name of the company. It was like Interstate or BMS Cat, but it was on the West Coast. They're based out of Seattle. Anyhow, I was talking with their head sales rep. This gal sold $4 or $5 million a year like clockwork. Just a great heavy hitter, sales rep. And her name was Yvonne. And Yvonne, when I asked her this same kind of question, like, what should we expect from multifamily? She's like, look, forget about multifamily. In commercial, you can count on about $1 of revenue per square foot under relationship. She didn't have any formal contracts, but she had a process she would take her clients through to onboard them. And she's like, once I've onboarded a client, I could count on about $1 of revenue per square foot. And so she would use Google Earth, because Google Earth has a measurement tool of the rooftop and the side of the building. So if you know how many stories, a commercial story is somewhere between 12 and 14 feet. So if it's a 4-story hotel, it's 48 to 50 feet, something like that. You can very easily, when you onboard a new client or building, figure out their rough square footage. And you can start to keep track of this, which can allow you to project. Now, this isn't science. Okay, there's I don't have scientific data, but I feel like that number is proved out for us. So my point being is that
Chris, is that mitigation and reconstruction?
That's full service.
Square foot.
Yep.
And that is in what time? In what time period?
Per year.
Over what time period? Per year. Okay.
$1 per square foot per year.
Okay.
So 1 million square feet's a lot, right? It's a lot. Your typical apartment complexes, that might be 5 apartment complexes for $1 million. So you start doing that math, and it's like $200K per a complex, maybe reasonable. Seems reasonable, right? A 300 unit complex. Okay, so anyway, so that, to answer your question, there are no really awesome ways to gauge frequency. Although multifamily is certainly a much higher propensity market because of the turnover of units. The fact that just rental units, by and large, people tend to treat them more harshly. We have a high propensity for loss. You get into senior living. Senior living, in certain types of senior living, for example, memory care and assisted living, are the 2 highest propensity loss environments, because you have dementia on site. You also have a lack of mobility. You have trip and fall. You have food spills. You have toilet clogs, people flushing things down the toilet that they shouldn't. There's all kinds of factors in those 2 segments of senior living. Whereas like independent living, more like a hotel. You got people that are fully mobile. They don't have medical issues. There's no dementia on site, that kind of stuff. It's more like a hotel. Convention hotels, much higher loss propensity than business travel hotels, because they host banquets, weddings, giant conferences, lots and lots of alcohol abuse on site, that all lead to higher propensity loss, fires in units, trip and falls, bloodborne, like all the things.
Campus.
Anyway, I'm rabbit trailing.
Yeah.
But my point, okay, so back to this.
I think I'm responsible for getting you off track. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you did. That's okay, though. It's fun.
You're on a good roll, and I got you off track, man.
I know. We were nerding out there for a second. So back to your original question, though, or my original preaching. So we need to always be hyper-focused, whether it's an existing client in commercial, because I'm trying to earn and sell effectively the next 5 jobs, right? So when I'm in the one job, I still want to be learning and discovering about my client. So for example, here's one practical way that all of our PMs at the end of a commercial job would circle back with the client after everything's paid, and they would ask them the question, how did me and our team do compared to other contractors you've worked with in the past? Such a awesome question. Gives us so much intel about what the client's preferences and concerns and needs are.
Expectations.
So that's just an example of us digging into knowing our customer a little bit better. But there's 3 areas that I always want to be investigating with my customer. I want to know about them, their business, and their past experience. Now with them, it's important we kind of define these things, because I think where a lot of business owners and salespeople in our business and others, they over-index on rapport building. I call this soccer mom or soccer dad chatter. This is like the sideline stuff, or the things we talk about in the foyer at church before service, that kind of stuff. Where it's like, oh my gosh, our kids had the same piano teacher 5 years ago, or oh, our kids are in the same soccer league, yada, yada, yada. Oh, you're into golf? Me too. This kind of stuff. And so when I say we want to get to know them, I think a mistake a lot of people make is that's rapport building. I'm just trying to find commonality. No. Well, sure, there's some of that. But at some point, I want to transition into, Mike, I want to know, how long have you been at this property? What place did you work before this? Mike, what's your goal, man? Or do you love being a community manager, or is your goal to maybe be the asset manager at some point, or a portfolio manager, or do you want to own your own, property management company? Like, what's the aim? Where are you headed with this? Another thing about them is, Mike, I know that this industry is different for everybody, and every complex has its own challenges. What's the most stressful part of your job? I want to understand them professionally as well as personally. Now, when it comes to understanding their business, I want to understand everything about their business. Let me give you an example. When I was getting into hotels, okay, I love hotels, by the way. I love selling hotels. I love being in them. I love all the things. I think it's just, there's so many reasons why I love hotels. I love people watching. There's always things happening in hotels. It's just interesting, But when I started selling hotels, I remember one of my first clients, her name was Jennifer Williams. She would have been actually my second client, or was rather. But Jennifer was this hot shot, just whippersnapper of a young hotel executive. She was probably in her late 20s, and she was running an Embassy Suites at the Portland airport. And she had recently been assigned a second hotel in their portfolio at the Portland airport, the Holiday Inn there. Both of them had like 10,000 square feet of banquet space. These were big, large format hotels. And she's 27 running these two multi-million-dollar hotels. Yeah. And so she's the whole package, dresses to the nines, looks like she's coming out of a Gucci store, hair done, like just, and
never
in control
misses a day.
of everything.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like The Devil Wears Prada, like picture something from that movie, right?
Yeah.
And I'm in my process. I follow up with her one day to schedule a property walk, which is one of my sales steps with every commercial property. And I call her up, and Jennifer answers, and she's like, "Hey, Chris, how's it going? What's up?" And I said, "Well, I was just calling to schedule that property walk." And she's like, "Oh, yeah." She said, "Chris, I got to tell you something." And the way she said it, I was like, "Oh, no.
Here it comes.
Something
Here
bad's about to happen." She's not going to use me. She has another person she just signed an agreement with or something, right? But no, she said, "Chris, listen, you got to know, you're calling me on a Monday." And she's like, and my guess is that all 200 other hotel general managers here in the Portland market are probably doing the same thing I am, which is I am crazy busy trying to close out last month. Because not only was it a Monday, it was the first week of the month. And so she said, "Let me just explain to you what I mean." She's like, "I've got 3 conference calls today, one with our owner, managing partner of the investment company that owns this property. I've got a call with corporate of the hotel management company. And I have a conference call with my peers here in the Portland market, all today. And truth be told, I don't even have my reports done. I'm not even ready for it yet, but I'm on the phone with you." And she said, but let me just educate you. She's like, "So at the end of this week, I've got weddings that are checking in. But Monday, on top of all that, I also have business groups. I have an insurance group that's using our banquet facilities for a conference. I've got a soccer team coming in from a kids club team that's going to be here all week for a soccer tournament in Portland. All of them are checking in 3 hours." She said, "Chris, most of the time when I sign a contract with a vendor, I do it in the middle of the month on a Wednesday." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Yeah. All right." She's like, "So if you could call me middle of the month, I'm happy to do a property walk. That sounds great." Anyway, so we finished that phone call, but here's the takeaway. Okay. When I tell that story in a workshop, people are like, "Oh, wait, does that mean I can only call on hotels like 1 or 2 or 3 days a month?"
That's what I'm thinking right now.
I know, right?
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly.
She's
so
telling you are not a priority unless you come at me 3 days out of the month. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing right now.
So I could have gotten it. Now, honestly, that would have been my instinct, but here's what I did instead.
Yeah.
I did not limit myself to 3 days a month of prospecting hotels, but here's what I did the next time I called a GM on a Monday early in the month or the first week of the month, is when they answered the phone, I said to them, "Hey, Scott Youngblood," another one of my hotel clients in Portland. "Scott, hey, listen, man, I know it's Monday. I know it's only the second of the month. I'm sure you're totally slammed working on your month-end reports and things. So if you want me to call back, I totally can. That's how I would open the call. For every phone call to hotel people after that. And what was interesting is 8 times out of 10, not only were they not irritated or upset that I called them, but most of them actually wanted to talk to me to take a break from all of that stuff. But the fact that I knew that they were busy completely brought all the walls down because they knew I understood their industry.
Yep. And their life, their internal struggles too. Yeah.
I was speaking their language, and I built on that. I built on that. And so I learned, I understood, I started to learn like what ADR means, average daily rate. I started to learn terms like occupancy. I started to learn the language of the business so I could come in, and Will, who is his front desk manager, still is, been there like 20 years. Every time I'd walk through the door, I'd be like, "Hey, Will, how's it going, man? How's occupancy this weekend? You got any big groups checking in? How's the ADR lately? Is it up or is it down?" Because these are things that they're all talking about internally. And when I speak that language, I'm one of them.
Yeah.
It's really important we get to know our clients and our prospects' businesses is as deep of a level as possible. And I would go so far to say is the goal as a project manager, as a sales rep, as an owner of a restoration company, the goal is to get to where you know the verticals that you're selling to so well you could sit for an interview and probably get the job. I could tell you right now, I haven't sold actively into these verticals in a few years, several years, but I promise you, if I went to go apply for a hotel sales manager job or potentially even a hotel GM job,
you could
I almost guarantee you I could get it if I wanted it. Yeah, because I know the language. I know how the money moves. I know how they make money. I know how they make money in their restaurant because I've asked them. It's another great example. When I'm in a sales meeting, when I met with Scott Youngblood after this, another Embassy Suites manager, on probably my 3rd meeting with him, I said, "Scott, forget about restoration, carpet cleaning, tweeted carpet cleaning too." I said, "Forget about all that. Any other issues you're having with your building right now?" And I said, the reason why I asked Scott is, being in the business we're in, it's an incredibly complex business. We have an incredibly wide scope of work that we do. Everything from environmental asbestos abatement, biohazard cleanup, all the things we do, deodorization, everything else. And we work in so many different environments. I said, my sub list, the contractors and artisan contractors and subs and suppliers I work with is a mile deep. So if you're having any issue on the property, there's a good chance if I don't take care of it, I've got a vetted contractor I can introduce you to that has a good reputation and can potentially help you solve that problem.
Yeah.
And isn't that true of most of us? In the business, restoration? I mean, shoot, we have all kinds of random contractor connections and suppliers we work with and flooring, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so that opens the door for me to help them with something before they have their first damage event. And it puts me in the helper seat before they ever have a damage event need. So I'm there when the damage event arises, right? So that's understanding their business. And then, of course, their past experience. Here's where restorers screw up, is they tend to go in the conversation straight to, when was the last time you worked with a disaster restoration company? They just cut right to the quick. The problem with that is it's a pretty obvious question. I want to badmouth your last. I'm counting on the fact you had a terrible experience.
That's exactly right.
And I want to sell over the top of that. And so tell me about how crappy of an experience you had with XYZ restoration, so then I can tell you how rad we are, right?
Yeah.
And instead, what I've learned over the years is to simply say, tell me about the contractors that you've worked with here on site, like we mentioned earlier. And that teaches me so much about my prospect or my clients' expectations, preferences for vendors they work with, right? And unique needs and requirements that they might have, that if I can optimize to them, if I can meet those needs, chances are I'm going to be their go-to. So anyways, that's a lot of what we teach, and it's important. Like, this is a prerequisite to really crushing in commercial, is you have to change your mindset, both in terms of how you're training your sales rep to go sell, but then also you and your operations teams, your PMs, your job file coordinators, all of them need to be engaging in this discovery in every interaction they have with that customer.
Yeah, when you're telling me about the story about like sorry, I got a call coming in, but when you were talking about the story about the hotel and really understanding, walking the walk and talking to them and being able to like converse with them and understand what their pain points were, I was thinking in my mind, I remember this when I was doing restoration, and I started with, and I was able to scale my business. Thankfully, I got out of that situation, but I was in that classical situation where I bought the business. It was a franchise. It was me, only me. I was in the truck. I was marketing. I was doing everything. So I was swinging the hammer. I was doing the mold abatement. I knew what it felt like to get a call on a Saturday night, right? And I would get these social media ads on my phone, and I won't name the name, but they were a marketing firm. And they were trying to relate to their customers. So it was in good intentions. But they would film themselves in a Tyvek suit, but underneath it was like a nice polo shirt like this, or like a golf shirt or something, and it would be, and they'd have a respirator, and they would, talk about if you want more leads and so on and so forth. And I was in the thick of it, and I was thinking, they have no clue what we're going through right now. They have no idea what this work is like. You are drenched in sweat. You feel like you're breathing through a wet towel. You're trying to wear as little as you can, t-shirt and shorts underneath because you're trying to stay cool. You're not trying to wear these nice colored shirts, You try to do that with the customer and everything, present yourself well, but when you're really doing the work, you're really just trying to stay cool and stay with it. And it instantly made me kind of turn off that customer or that client because I was like, how can they service my needs if they don't even know what my needs are and they don't know what I go through on a business and emotional every day trying to grow this business. So. And they were trying to do the right thing. They were trying to empathize and trying to be part of the industry, but it was very transparent. They really weren't. They were just outsiders trying to sell to the industry, and it was a big difference.
Let me give you another example. Okay, so I had a client in Houston, a really big company. I won't say who because I don't want to be identifiable, right? Mm-hmm. But it was a big franchise operator in Houston. There's several. And I was out at an on-site for 4 days with their business. Brandon, this was one of Brandon and I's early clients. Brandon was working with the PM team, doing some training with the PMs about pre-con budgeting or who knows what. And I'm out with my salespeople all week doing road shows. And this one sales rep gets an opportunity for this big church in the greater Houston area. And this church had 3 locations. And at their main location, they had a full elementary school. It was like a really big operation. So 3 properties plus a school. It was a really great opportunity. And they got in a meeting with the chief engineer of all 3 properties. And I was like, hey, way to go. This is a great one.
Let's do it. That's
so
right.
We go there. I drive there with her. And I didn't game plan with her. Like I like to just go observe my reps and then coach them and kind of help them iterate and whatever. And so we go into the meeting, and I'm just sitting down there being a wallflower. And what does she do? She says to this chief engineer, hey, thanks so much for making time for us. Listen, I want to share with you a little bit about what we do and how we do it. And then, just see how potentially we could help you and serve you and work together, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And then she pulls out this folder, this branded folder with several pull-out slicks in it. And one by one just starts, hey, I don't know that if you know this about XYZ company. It was a well-known brand, Super Bowl commercials, all the things. And probably just gave it away. But she's like, we do document drying and preservation, and we do da-da-dee-da-da, and we have desiccant heat dry. We could do a 1 million square foot building, do. And if we needed to, we have 200 and some odd locations, blah, blah, blah. If you had a really big thing, we could have 150 people here tomorrow, kind of yada, yada. And just one by one went through all the slicks. Here's why we're so awesome. Here's why we're so great. And I could tell I was observing the body language of that chief engineer. And I could tell that this guy had heard the same kind of dog and pony show 4 times before us. Mm-hmm. And so I waited, and I couldn't resist. I had to. Before we left, I asked the chief engineer, I butted in. And I asked the engineer, I said, hey, so what did you do before you got into this?
Yeah.
And you know what I found out? He said, I was the head of facilities at the Astrodome.
Whoa.
He had a team of 20 engineers working under him at the Astrodome.
Oh my gosh.
And he still had season tickets to the Astros because he was buddy-buddy with the facility manager, the new one that replaced him, at the Astrodome. And if I hadn't jumped in, this gal would have never known that about him. We got back out into the parking, and I asked a series of other questions. Hey, wow. I said, when he told me that, I was like, whoa, that's a huge deal. Yeah. How'd you get into that? He's like, well, out of college, I was a pipe fitter, and he had this whole story. I was like, man, that's so interesting. I said, man, you probably have so much experience in managing facilities and properties and stuff like that. What's the transition like been going from Astrodome to a church? And he kept talking and he kept sharing, and then I got in and I asked him a question. I was like, hey, were you able to bring over any of your vendors that you used at the Astrodome to the church as things have come up? And he said, yes. Which ones? What do you like about them? All this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And he's just spilling the beans.
Yeah.
He's just telling me everything.
Yeah.
And I got back out into the
giving
car.
you the playbook.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so we got out in the parking lot. I sat down with her and I was like, so how'd you feel about that? And she knew what had just happened. She was like, she's like, that was so amazing to watch you do that. And I was like, well, listen, don't overthink it. I've been doing this for 1,000 years. I've had hundreds of these conversations, so I'm really good at it. I said, but let's think about what we just did there. All I did was I took an interest in him. Mm-hmm. And I think a major mistake that most restoration sales reps are doing when they go into a meeting like that, it's a really good meeting, and they think they're doing the right thing by sharing all the features and benefits of our cool company.
Yep.
When in reality, the customer doesn't give a rip about that. They don't have a loss in progress. They don't have a need for disasteration right now in almost every case. They don't care about it. And in fact, it's boring. They don't want to. They don't want to, you know what I mean? It's just like a thing they don't need to worry about right now.
Yeah.
And so she was blown away. And that was a transformational moment for her because she saw me model the better way to have a sales meeting, which is know thy customer, get to know them. Everything else will come out of that. They'll eventually, in fact, what I often found, and maybe I said it earlier, as maybe a previous conversation I had, is that when I would hyper focus on them, eventually they come around and ask about me. Mm-hmm. And now they're interested.
And they'll tell you how to sell them too.
Oh,
if you listen hard, they'll tell you. Yeah,
so true, man. Yeah. So true.
Well, hey, man, I really appreciate it. I don't want to chew up too much more of your time. I know we're shooting for 40. We probably went past that. So, and you know what? I think I got like 20% of my sheet, the questions. So there's a lot more to it and a lot more that we want to get through. But want to be respectful of your time and our listeners' time. So thank you so much for coming on. I want to make sure if this resonated with people, if they're having a hard time with sales or what have you, you tell me what do you find you can make the most impact with somebody who might be stuck in their business, and how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. Well, they can obviously go to floodlightgrp.com. Stands for floodlightgroup.com. And just explore and check that out. The other thing, honestly, though, is people should go find me on LinkedIn. And you owners who are listening that aren't on LinkedIn, okay, this is a great little smack to wake you up. It's very important today, especially if you have any ambition to go into commercial and become a bigger company, scaled company. So go find me on LinkedIn and send me a direct message, or I'm going to give out my cell phone number. You can literally send me a text and we can jump on the phone and talk shop. 541-990-8050. But that's the best way. And the way we sell is just like how you're hearing me talk right here. I'm going to ask you a ton of questions about your business and understand to see if there's even something potentially we can help you with. But yeah, we just reach out. We'll talk shop.
It was great talking to a true master of sales, especially in the restoration industry. So thanks for sharing your wisdom, and had a lot of fun talking to you today.